hope you find useful. I was chatting to the person who helps me actually with some of my marketing yesterday, and she was saying to me, well, why are you doing these Instagram videos? What are they all about? Why are they going to be useful for people? And I just thought, actually, that's quite a good point. Why don't I hop on and explain a little bit about my thinking around that, actually, which I hope is going to be useful. So why am I talking to you about transaction analysis? Why do I think that as a kind of a creative coach and drawing on some psychotherapy experience, that's helpful for artists to understand TA theory? Well, I go to this is my own kind of particular little, I don't think it's a model really, so much as just an idea about something. So I think it's a bit like an iceberg, that we, in many respects, people are a little bit like icebergs. So often they have problems that are above the surface that we could see as being inside part of our awareness, that we know what they are, we can talk about them, we can identify some of maybe the beliefs and the messages and the things that we believe. Things like, the messages that we would find in our inner critic, maybe imposter syndrome. In fact, Rachel Davis was talking a lot about this. She's an American artist, and she was on the Art Juice podcast. I think it was last week with Louise Fletcher and Alice Sheridan. If you've not caught it, I'd recommend it. It's a really good one. But she was talking about this, and again, we've also got other limiting beliefs. So these are often things that we are aware of, that sit in our awareness, that kind of present themselves at the surface. I think we're understanding psychology to a little bit more, with a bit more depth and a bit more understanding, can be really useful, particularly as artists, because I think what that does is it takes us to some of the material, the message, the beliefs, maybe the psychological processes of how we are in our lives, the way in which we interact with people, the way in which we interact with our work, the way we hold relationships both with ourselves and others. It helps us, I think, begin to bring some of that material that's maybe more deeply buried, that is actually outside of our awareness, helps us bring some of that material to the surface. And as you bring it to the surface, as we begin to understand more about it, then I think we can start to do something about this. One of the things that Rachel was saying, and I absolutely agree with this, is that often there is material that we hold that is part of us that surfaces periodically around things, and actually sometimes we can't get rid of it. And actually, I don't think it's helpful to try and get rid of it, because sometimes we're talking about stuff that's actually very deeply buried and also is a fundamental part of our personality and how we are. What we can do, however, is I think through understanding that, when we understand it better, we know how to deal with it better. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. I've noticed particularly over the last sort of 2 or 3 weeks, the last month or so, that I've been feeling a lack of confidence, actually, and lack of motivation around my art. And I was chatting to my coach about this the other day, and I was saying to her, I'm noticing a lot of old material showing up, that processes that I recognise in myself that come from the part of me that I would identify in using TA language as being the child part of me, were being really activated, that I was feeling less confident, I was questioning my ability as an artist. And I was saying to her, I wonder what's been going on so that that's showing up again, because I think that's what happens, is that when we're under stress, we tend to go back to a more of a default, really. We use old material. So if we think about what I was saying in some of the videos about the adult being more present, I think under stress, either the parent or the child part, or both, or often both, will start to surface. So that's when I think understanding that that's where that comes from is really useful, because that is often a clue that there's something going on, that we need to attend to something in a way. Though the fact that that material is getting activated is a message that we are under stress, and that perhaps we need to think about supporting ourselves better. So when I thought about the fact that I was feeling more vulnerable, because that's what it came back to, I was feeling more vulnerable in my art making, and I thought about, well, why is that? I thought, well, actually, yeah, I've been really busy over the last sort of 2 or 3 months with a lot going on. I had 3 art fairs, which were okay, but not great. I mean, I had sold some work, but they weren't as successful as I'd hoped, and I think that made me question whether or not the work that I was doing was any good, which is something that I can do sometimes. I think the other thing that was kind of going on was I was thinking about, some of the things I will be doing next year. And I've just committed to do the Manchester Art Fair, which I'm really excited about, and I'm really looking forward to doing it. But it's also quite a big expense, and I need to get a lot of work ready for it. So I was feeling the pressure of that. So you put those two things together, And what that was saying to me was that actually I needed to engage in some self-care, you know. And that was useful, really, to know that the child and the parent material that was surfacing for me was actually saying, you're feeling vulnerable right now, and what you need to do is to tend to the vulnerability rather than fight against the messages. Because I think what we can sometimes do is we can get very focused on this area here, which is the stuff that's sitting above the surface of the water, you know, the iceberg that's above the water. And so we start to get involved in and think about and maybe try to challenge or fight with these messages, whereas actually what these messages are telling us, if they're getting louder, is that there's something going on down here. There's something going on beneath the surface, like the vulnerability, and that's what we need to attend to. So yeah, that's just some thoughts for me, really, is my little iceberg diagram, you know, what's above and what's below. And I think when we understand ourselves better, and we can use some theory from TA for that, we can start to attend to the deeper vulnerabilities rather than getting caught in the, I guess in a way, the defence, really, you know, the bit that comes above the surface. So that's it from me for today. I will be back again, probably not next week because it's Christmas, but in the new year with some more of these little videos. So I hope they're useful and have a great day. Okay, see you soon. Bye.